All right, I want to welcome everyone to the training today, the Bones of Research, and we are so happy to have Yvonne Giles with us today. And you know, let me look a little bit, tell you a little bit about Yvonne Giles. We see that our presenter today is a native of Lexington, and she has presented her findings about African American history in Central Bluegrass region through lectures, walking tours, brochures, pamphlets. She's worked with elementary and university students, and she says that her interest springs from genealogy. And so that family genealogy, and that's got her started on this path. She became a board member of the African Cemetery #2 in 2000. She's authored several publications and articles, and she's the recipient of several awards. And so it is an honor to have you here to help our young people to grow in their research skills. Now I'm going to ask that our two interns introduce themselves and just tell Ms. Giles anything you want to know, want her to know about yourselves. And you got your mics muted, so you can unmute your mic. And we'll start at the top there with Shakina.
Hi, my name is Shakina Jones. I'm a recent graduate of Hazard High School. There's not much to say about myself.
What's your plans?
My plans are to go to Hazard Community and to major in psychology. And then I will be on my way to Berea College to finish up college.
Okay.
That's my plan.
Kiara?
I'm Kiara Linden. I just graduated from North County Central High School, and I'm going to Morehead State University to get a bachelor's degree in psychology, and then I'm transferring to Louisville to finish out and get my law degree.
All right. All right, very good. And we're blessed to have, these are our first ever student interns. So we're glad to have them on board. And now, Yvonne, I'm going to turn it over to you. And when you get ready for me to share the PowerPoint, just let me know. And we'll go from there.
Okay. I'm so glad to meet both of you. And I'm glad you're, 50 years younger than I am. I'm so pleased about that. I always like to know that younger people are interested in our history because that's the only way it remains alive. So you may take a different path because you're in school now and you know, this may be a job for the summer, but I'm hoping that it sparks in you an interest that you will pick up later in your life, because that's how we all have gotten started. We've had relatives who will force us to listen to what they've had to say, and we'll say, oh yeah, okay, and go on with our lives. And 30, 40, 50 years later, we start remembering what those older people have told us. And I always tell younger people when they know that history, they had become the chosen person that older person decided to talk to. And at the time, neither one of you really knew it. I was 25 when I had great aunts start telling me about our family history. They gave me photos, I took notes, and I carried all of that around with me everywhere I moved for 35 years and did not really concentrate on what they had told me until I started doing my genealogy in 2000. So, just because they've told it to you doesn't mean you can forget it, because you won't. It'll come back to you. So your lessons today will be, what do you do with that information? What interest will it spark in you down the road? What things do you need to know now so that when you pick it up, you'll be ahead of the game? You won't have to start from scratch necessarily. One of the things I want to ask both of you, what do you know about your family, Shakina?
I don't know much. I only know of the members that I know today and that are alive. I don't know much about history, especially in Hazard or in the Southeast.
Okay, are you from the area originally, your family? Have you always lived in the Hazard area?
I believe so, yes.
And how far back does your family go? Do you have grandparents that are still living?
I have a grandmother that is still living. I haven't heard much about history from her.
How old is she?
84, I believe.
Oh, how wonderful. That is remarkable to have someone living. Does she have good memory?
I would say so. I know she's good at telling stories.
So you've heard some of her stories. Have you heard some of her stories?
Um, I don't think so. I mean, she might have told them to others. Yeah.
But they haven't stuck to you yet. Okay. What about you, Kiara? What do you know about your family history? I can't hear you. You have to.
I don't know much at all about it.
Okay. Are you from the Hazard area
No,
family?
no,
You've moved to Hazard?
no, I don't live in Hazard.
Okay. Where do you live?
I live in
Close.
Floyd County.
In where?
Floyd County.
Floyd. Okay. But what do you know about your family? It doesn't matter necessarily where you live. What do you know about your
I
family?
know that I think that they're from the Red Fox area. I know that's where a lot of them reside.
Mhm.
And in Hazard.
So you have some connection, but you're not sure what it is. And the reason I'm asking those questions, I worked with an intern one summer from Berea, and she was to help me with a project that I was working on. And she had never done any research, nothing, absolutely nothing. So the only way that I got her interested was to have her start looking for her own family. And it was like Katie barred the door after then. She knew just vaguely about them. You know, she could tell me about her parents and maybe a grandparent, but that was it. But once she got into Ancestry and looking up documents for her family group, it was like, oh my goodness, she's got a new career. And it really does, truly does make a difference when you know more information about your family than you do at present. And it's not of great interest to you at this point. I understand that. I've been there, done that, I know. But hopefully, you know, what we hear today will help you. Do you both have pencil and paper at your elbow? Okay, good. Because what I would like for you to do is to take notes, because you do have assignments. And from those notes, I would like to hear Miss Emily report to me that you have completed an assignment. How many weeks do you have, Emily?
Pardon?
How many weeks are we going, will
Oh,
you have?
I have them until the end of July.
Okay. Okay. Well, I'm ready for you to start the PowerPoint.
All righty. Let
Thank you.
me see.
Can both of you see? Is it on everyone's screen?
Okay, hold on a minute here. Let's see. Can everybody see it? Can everybody see?
I can.
Okay. I'm gonna try to go out and bring it back up this
Okay.
way. For some reason, it wants to just do it that way.
Can you click on each slide then?
Oh yeah, but I was trying to
Okay,
get
well,
a
let's
full screen.
do it that way. That's good.
Okay, all right.
Bones of research, asking questions and then finding the answers. Because if you have a question, you don't have an answer, you just remain ignorant. That's all I can say. And it's always a challenge finding answers. So we'll go to the next slide. Hazard, Perry County. What do you all know about Hazard and Perry County? Who was the first settler? This is, if you know the answer, say so. This is not at school. You're not going to get graded on this. What do you know about Hazard, Perry County? Who was it named for? Who was the first settler?
No.
Okay, that's your first assignment. Write down Hazard, Perry County. And if you don't know who it was named for, both his middle and last name are part of your county. So I want you to find out who that person is.
I'm glad I didn't blurt out the answer.
It's hard not to, I know. Oh dear. Okay, we'll go to slide 3. Okay, we got everybody up on slide 3. These are military veterans. Every community has had someone that fought in a war. And most of the veterans that are memorialized.
I'm sorry if I cut you off. I'm not on slide 3.
Okay. Which one are you on? 2?
I'm on 1.
You're still on 1?
Yeah.
Okay, and Emily, can we advance?
It should be on 3. I mean, my screen is showing 3.
Well, you know, I'm still showing 1 as well.
Oh, really? Huh.
Mine is showing 1 too.
Oh, wow. Okay. That's interesting. What is it showing now?
It's still showing 1.
Huh. Let's see. That's interesting. So it's not changing at all?
No.
Okay, let me try something.
There we go. Okay, we're on slide 3 now. Thank you.
Uh-huh.
Okay, every community has memorials to veterans. I discovered that you have a World War I Memorial Veterans plaque. And my question is, do you know if any African American men were honored on that plaque? Not all. Okay, that's another project for you to find out. It means you have to locate the plaque and go through the names and then try to figure out which one of them are African American. And this can be a community project. What we have learned is that African Americans served in the military from the Revolutionary War all up into 1948 in segregated Army units. They were all Black military units, but were commanded by whites. So when it came time to pass out awards to name those veterans, they were ignored. The troops of the United States, colored troops during the Civil War, made up almost 10% of the men who actually fought in the war. After the war was over, they were not allowed to receive pensions. They were not allowed to apply for military grave markers or any of the other benefits that veterans could have. So as a group, GAR, Grand Army of the Republic, as a group, they lobbied Congress to get their due. Their pensions were no more than $10, $11, $12 a month, but it's at the time, it was money. It was something they needed. When they started dying, they finally got, many of them got their military markers. So if you have an old cemetery or any cemetery in Perry County that holds African Americans, go to that cemetery and look for those headstones. They will be military markers that will have a shield if they were in the Civil War or the Spanish-American War, and a cross for World War II, 1 through 2. And so look for those. That's how you're going to find out if the men's names are on these memorial markers. If they aren't, then it's your charge to make sure that they are memorialized. Print a brochure, lobby to have their names placed on a marker either at the cemetery or in a public place. It's a quick, easy thing to do. And there are Ancestry.com also will have a section that will allow you to research the military veterans. So that's your second project. First, find out who Hazard Perry County was named for and find out who of your military veterans have been honored. Okay, slide 4.
Okay, and I'll mention this, that for our website, we have started what's called the Gallery of African Americans in the Military. And yeah, so we've got a few pictures out there, but we're hoping people will send in pictures with the, what war they served in and so forth.
Okay, super.
All right, 4.
Church histories. Every community had churches. They may have started out with one, primarily a Baptist, Southern Baptist congregation. And I tell folks, church people didn't get along. They just didn't. That's why we have so many churches, denominations. When a group fell out with the group that's there, they went off and started another church. So you may find out what was the first church in your community, African American church, and then find out how many other churches came out of that one, because they constantly split. And it didn't matter what denomination it was. It could be Baptist, Methodist, Catholic, Lutheran, Jewish. It all had, that's just the genealogy of church expansion. So find out about all your churches, make a list of them, ask your old relatives, adults that you know, and then ask if they have church anniversaries, actually printed an anniversary. Make a collection of those for your museum, to put it out on the website, to have it available for research, because those anniversary programs will give you early history. They will talk about ministers, trustees, deacons, ladies groups in their organization. It's a wonderful resource, and you may find relatives who are very instrumental in these churches. Are all the churches still there? Have some of them disappeared? If they have, what happened to them? Try to document that as well. Again, where will you find this history? Go to the library. Library is my go-to place. I live at the library and the county clerk's office. It's been real tough with COVID, but I've got so many notebooks and files you just would not believe that I've collected over the years. Do either of you have questions? Okay, we'll go to the next slide.
All right. Our church histories is one of the projects that we'll be working on.
Oh, good. Great. Good deal.
All right, slide 5.
Where all of you know about black coal miners? You know of any in your community?
I
All
think
of black coal miners in Kentucky came from the South.
Mhm.
Did you know that?
I think my poppy worked in the coal mines.
Okay,
Mhm.
good. So you can ask, where did they come from? Did they come from Alabama, Georgia? And then why? Why did they come from the South? Find out. There's a story behind that. What communities? I know you've got a lot of coal mining communities in Hazard. Where did they live? How were they treated? Were they discriminated against? Was their pay the same as the white coal miners? And are there still people living there? Can they tell, have they ever told their story? Find out. Ask.
Shakina typed up a transcribed interview that I conducted probably back in 1983 or 84,
Okay.
and of a lady, and it about living in a coal camp.
Good.
Yeah.
What did you find, Shakina? What information did you learn by doing that?
From talking about one of the interviews I did.
Yes.
About Frankie Taylor Jones.
Oh, one I just did.
Mm-hmm.
She actually talked about coal mining a lot. It's one of the most common themes she was talking about. She talked about how Kodak coal mines and how, the workers, I think they got along, but it was just the boss that might have been a little discriminated against them. And how it's a lot.
I'm sure there is going to be a lot. And when I was preparing for your session, I did a lot of internet search to find out what's available for you to look at. There is a coal miners in Perry County. It's on a roots, ROOTS .web. Roots Web is all one word, rootsweb.com. They listed all of the coal mines in Perry County and numbers of employees and what years they operate. It was a huge list. It just surprised me. I had no idea you all had that many coal mining communities. So that's a resource you can use. And I think I went down to 12 or 13 pages on the internet to find that information. So never stop at number 1 through 5. Go down as far as you can go till you get tired, because you will find information on the lower end of an internet search page. But there is information, lots of information about coal mining in Perry County. Another resource is the Notable Kentucky African American Database. It's at UK education.edu or uky.edu. Raynette Jones is the co-founder of that website, and she curates it. She too has a large reference list of material on coal miners in the Eastern Kentucky area, in Perryville and Perry. So don't just stop with the, oh yeah, I know a coal miner. This was a whole vibrant community, and they made a good living doing it. It was a hazardous, extremely hazardous job. So it's good that you transcribed that. That's more than I would have ever been able to do. Questions? Okay, we'll go to our next one. Before the railroad came to Perry County, everything had to come by river. And I truly was surprised to learn that. I just assumed that everybody had access to a road and rail transportation, but you all didn't receive rail transportation to 1912. Is that right?
Yep.
So my question was, they had to have these flatboats, steamboats, whatever they used in supplies. African Americans, trust me, were there. They were the labor force. And this is something that I have learned through my research, is don't discount these manual laborers, because without them, commerce would have come to a halt. They would not have progress. So check to see what African Americans were poling the flatboats, hauling cargo, loading and unloading at the docks, employed by the companies, the stores that were shipping on the river. Do either of you know of any of your relatives who worked the river? Has that been discussed in your family? No? Okay, ask. Sometimes older generations don't value their labor, and they tend not to want to tell you about their work as domestic servants or physical labor like porters and janitors and things like that. These were still very, very important jobs. And unfortunately, they were always told or always made to feel that they were the low man on the totem pole. And most of the time they were, because they weren't paid much. And people talked down to them. But my whole attitude about them has reversed. If it had not been for these people, there would be no commerce in 100% of Kentucky cities and counties. Think about it. The ladies who were maids, the ladies who cleaned, the ladies who sewed, who babysat, the men who cut grass, hauled trash, did odd jobs. Without them, none of these communities would be here. So talk to them, help them develop a sense of pride in what they have done, and draw them out, because they can be funny. They can tell you some stories. Curl your hair. More so than normal. And look to see if there are any photographs. Sometimes they did take pictures in groups. Sometimes they took pictures individually. I have pictures of my grandparents who owned a farm. And looking at them, I thought, Lord, they look like little refugees. I mean, they look so terrible. But they were subsistence farmers, and they fed all the family and 3/4 of the community. So they contributed to the community in terms of their labor and the products that they provided to the community. So I'm terribly proud of them. Oh my goodness, look at this. They were all that literally patched jeans, bibbed aprons, and the print dress, old shoes. But I'm terribly proud of my grandparents. So look for the photographs. Hopefully you'll be able to find someone who can identify those individuals. Employment on the river. Okay, what do we have next? Railroad. We know that the railroad was late in coming into the county. And again, trust me, blacks were there. Truly, blacks were there. I understand they had to tunnel through a mountain to bring the rail into the city or the county. There's a whole story there. How did they do? Find out. Ask someone in your family. Do you know if anybody in your family worked the railroad? No. And what were their jobs? They weren't engineers necessarily driving the train, but you still had to have people who loaded coal, who filled the water tanks, who unloaded and loaded freight, who maintained the rails themselves. Have you heard of the term Gandhi dancers?
Hmm.
Have you no? And you can go out online and probably find these. These were railroad gang men, and that's what they called them. And what they did was straighten the rails out, because the rails would slide. And in order to keep the train on the track, they would have to straighten the rails out, particularly in curves. And they would have these songs. It was a rhythmic song that they would sing so that when they hit a certain beat, everybody would lift the bar to straighten out the rail. Go online, find your YouTubes, look at it. It's truly fascinating, absolutely fascinating. And most of the time, the gangs were African Americans.
And what were they called again?
Oh, see, I told you.
Gandhi
dancers.
Huh.
So this is another profession that African Americans were very, very much involved in. So, and it was a major commerce for you as a community. So find out who they were if you've got railroad people in your family. Okay, our next one. Schools. Oh, this will be a good one. Have you started any research on schools yet?
We've done quite a bit on the first schools in Perry County. There's still quite a bit more to go.
Okay. Well, a good resource for you to go look at is the Notable Kentucky African American Database. Have you been? I see you shaking your head, Emily. You've looked at it.
Yeah,
They have a list of early schools teachers from when 1870s forward. Most people feel that Kentucky prohibited education of enslaved people, and they didn't. There was no state law that prohibited education of enslaved people. Some communities actually had schools. They would call them Sunday schools, but they would allow enslaved people to go and learn how to read and write. And they can only do it when they're not involved in labor, like taking care of the children, bringing in the crops, doing whatever they could. But they could attend school. And then there were individual slave owners who actually taught enslaved people to read and write. But the majority of people felt that if they got an education, then they didn't want to work. And they were danger. There was a danger to the other enslaved people if there was an educated Negro or educated colored person among the group. But that didn't keep them from learning, because they already knew that education was a key to their own well-being and advancement. So there will be some early schools, probably before the Civil War. I discovered in reading through an old newspaper here in Lexington that we had a school for enslaved African Americans as early as 1792. Wow. I couldn't believe it, just could not believe it. But there it was. There it was. And it said, have your enslaved person bring a permission slip to attend the school. So, just because we were not supposed to be educated didn't mean that it didn't happen. So be very, very aware when you're reading through materials, because sometimes little sentences or bits of information will pop up. That will send you down the rabbit hole to go look. So start, since you've already started on the early schools, try to find out before emancipation, 1865, if there were any schools, anybody teaching schools or teaching those who were enslaved how to read and write. Most of the time it occurred in church settings. So the churches were usually the locations of early education for enslaved people. Are any of the school buildings still standing, Emily? Do you know?
No.
Okay. But do you have any photos is the other question.
Yes.
Oh, good.
Mhm.
This is wonderful. Okay. Okay, next slide. Black professionals. Now, I know you're a very small community in terms of African American population, but you will have some who pursued self-employment occupations. So check attorneys, law enforcement, nurse, all the people in the medical profession. Funeral homes tended to do better and were longer lived than some other professions. News reporters, barbers, beauticians, there's a whole category that I call Black professionals. And I don't mean they had PhDs. It meant that they had enough skill and enough gumption to go out and set up a business on their own. Those were Black professionals. So look for them, make a list, study them, and just create your own mini museum on Black professionals, because I know you had some in the community. And it's also possible that you had individuals who left your community, like Shakina and Kiara, are planning to go to college and gain more education. They may come back in 50 years and set up practice. Who knows? Who knows? But you are from here. So you count yourself as a native of this community that has advanced in your educational level. Okay. Any topics that we covered strike either one of you? If I ask you to choose a topic now, which ones would you choose? What about you, Kiara?
The professions.
The professionals?
Yeah.
Okay. Anyone in particular? Any profession in particular?
No, just as a whole.
Okay. So you zero in on somebody, huh? Do you have Black doctors and nurses?
I don't know of any in my family. I'm not sure.
Okay. Reporters?
I'm not sure.
Okay. Now I don't want you just telling me something and then not be able to find it. So help me. If you're going to choose Black professionals, what is your interest? What one profession would you look for?
Attorneys.
Okay. And do you know if you have any Black attorneys in town at present?
I don't know. I don't think so.
Okay. But is it possible that somebody had gone from your community and became an attorney and is practicing somewhere else?
I mean, maybe. I'm not really sure about my community, but maybe hasn't.
Okay. I see. Emily's shaking her head. She knows more than we know. So maybe you've chosen a good topic. Good for you.
Yeah.
What about you, Shakina? Shakina, which topic would you be most interested in?
Out of the category,
For which one now?
like out of the category or of my choosing, like
Which one of the categories that we have mentioned
that you would
today?
Oh, okay.
She's mentioned There's the Black professionals. There was the church histories, railroad, coal miners, all of those groups that we've talked about. Which one would you choose to say if you had to report on?
Probably the coal miners. I would be interested in coal miners because it's been talked about so much and I've heard a lot of it, and I would just be more interested in trying to learn more of history and people involved.
Mhm. Okay,
Yeah.
good.
Yeah, one of the
Okay.
things, Yvonne, one of the things that I plan on doing, we're gonna have some field trips. Gonna take them to the coal mining museum over in Harlan.
Oh, good.
Yeah, if we can. Yeah, I'm hoping they'll be open. So, but I want to take them over there, and I don't know, the history is very well documented over in that area.
Yes.
But that's one of the things we plan on doing.
Okay, good. Well, while you're over in Harlan County, this is another question. How did Harlan County get its name? And what white man and African American have the same name and were related? That's all I'm going to ask. While you're over there, try to find out. Okay, we'll go to slide 10. All right. Finding the answers is like the little rat in the maze. You got to figure out how to wander your way through the maze to get to the cheese at the end. Okay, number 11. These are resources I would suggest you look at. I always head straight to the library. Our local library is a wealth of resource. They usually have printed histories of the county and surrounding counties. They also have microfilmed copies of old newspapers, as well as census records. Just spend some time browsing the shelves, talking to the librarian, and they are always really helpful. If you tell them what you're looking for, they work there longer than you've been visiting, so they can tell you where the resources are and help you with locating them. Church anniversary booklets, sometimes they'll have a collection that people have donated. And my favorite place to go is cemeteries. Mm-hmm. Everybody says, no. I started in cemeteries, and I tell people when they can't find someone they're looking for, go to the cemetery. And that's from personal experience. I found two great aunts who my great aunts told me about. There were no birth records, no death records, because they were born and died before any of those were kept. When I show up in African Cemetery number 2, here is the headstone with the names of these two women that my great aunts only had heard about as children. I had two great aunts who lived across the street from each other in Cleveland and one in New York, and my grandmother lived in Ohio, Cincinnati. They got to talking about the family, get on the phone to each other, and you should have heard the argument. I'm sitting here taking notes. No, her name is Jane. No, her name was Mary, and so and so and so and so. They couldn't agree. I mean, they were really at each other's throats because they could not agree. When I found the headstone, those names were on that headstone, and their deaths had occurred before any of them had been born. All they remembered was the family had talked about the two sisters, their two sisters. So I tell people, go to the cemetery. You can't find anything, head yourself over to the cemetery, walk through it. If there is a printed record of names on the headstones, you'll find that in the library. And sometimes you can find people you just don't know. Read memorial signs like the Kentucky Historical Highway markers. They usually give you origins of your county, when it was organized, by whom, and how it was named. Read the memorial markers for military veterans. Anytime you see a memorial marker, read it. Take notes. Archive military records, old photographs, and there are several books that I discovered. There is an American series produced by Arcadia Publishing.
Mm.
This is what they look like.
Mm-hmm. I picked up a couple of those
Okay,
couple of
good.
weeks ago, on one on Lexington, one on Louisville. I've got the
Hey.
one on the railroad, Perry County.
Good.
And there's another one too that I have.
There's a Hazard, it says Hazard, Perry County. They are wonderful because invariably this one is about Blacks in Lexington, but other communities have a section on the colored people. I love those. Or Blacks' involvement in all segments. So always look for these, and these will be in your local library. Most of the time they are. There's also an Old Photos of Hazard by James Fitzpatrick. And I don't have a date on that, but that could possibly be in the library.
Okay.
But just look. Museums, you've already talked about going to the museum in Hazard, Harlan, looking for what information they have. It's just a great place if you're doing any research. Okay, 12. Listen. And that's really a hard thing to do, is to listen. Because you got to sit there and stay awake. But listening will bring you clues and lead you in a direction that you may not ever thought of. Oral histories that are already recorded, like Miss Hudson has recorded, and now transcribing. You just listening to them, you will find topics and directions that you never would have incurred otherwise. Talk to older residents, although some of them can drive you crazy because they'll digress and they'll tell you all kinds of stories, and they'll get in arguments like my great aunt. But I patiently took down every note. I didn't question them. I just listened. I'm so glad I did. Unfortunately, I didn't have a tape recorder at the time. But now with tape recorders and phones, you can record. You sitting there listening. And it really, really does help when you're going back trying to remember. Talk to relatives and family friends who are older than you are and find out what it is they know. And sometimes your age group, there may be someone in your age group who has an interest in history and they know more than you do. So talk to even your own age group. Okay, number 13. Read. This might not be the best. It's not the most entertaining, but it's also the most rewarding. I found on Ruth's Web The Story of Hazard, Kentucky, The Pearl of the Mountains by Lewis Plitcher, 1913. And it's his full excerpt. And he talks about everything he knew in 1913, names, individuals, what they did. So, and I just stumbled across that. But Ruth's Web had his narrative from 1913. He moved to Hazard from another location. So it was all new to him. So he told things that most native people probably wouldn't have said.
What was his name?
Lewis. See, I can't even read my own writing. This is not good. PLE. I think it's Fletcher?
That sounds familiar.
I scribbled it. This is not good. But go to rootsweb.com.
Okay.
And you know, they've got all kinds of categories. So
Uh-huh.
look for
Okay.
that. Deeds and wills. Are you planning any trips to the county clerk's office?
We probably will. We
Okay.
probably will. Mm-hmm.
And if you don't know how to read cursive, you're going to have to take a crash course.
They've actually did good reading my handwriting from 1984.
Okay,
I've
good.
written in cursive, so they've done good with that.
This is good because all the old deeds and wills, legal transactions are written in handwriting, and most of the clerks had good penmanship. There are very few of them that were illegible, but it can be a challenge. And then, of course, use trusted websites of local and state historical societies, university, and colleges. And I say trusted because they tend to do research. Some of the YouTube people who do blogs, they're not always factual. They don't always document what they say. And I use those resources. I don't avoid looking at them. I use them as clues. If somebody says something on a website and I'm not so sure about that, I go out and try to find out, is it true? So I use every source that I can, but I try to find collaborative information. So it's okay to use Wikipedia, but don't use it as a final source. Use it as a resource to guide you. Okay, number 14. Where to begin? You've already chosen a topic, attorneys and coal miners. What information is it you need to know? What about you, Shakina? What would you need to know about coal miners?
Well, what I would need to know is I would guess what the family is, where they came from, how they came to where they are now. That's all I can think of.
Because that will help you guide, if you're talking to anybody, that will help guide your questions. You must think through before you start. What is it I want to know? And not have to spend and waste your time. Think through what you're going to do. And then write it down, keep notes. That is so important. You just must keep notes and then try to keep them organized. I had real issues when I first started of making notes, and then they weren't very organized. I would just go bananas because I couldn't find my notes. Well, what I ended up doing when I would run across an article that I wanted to save, I would copy it or write it in hand. Created these notebooks. I have 2 bookshelves with these 3-ring binders that I have specifically labeled Colored Orphan Home. And in that, I put in photos that I would find, news articles that I found. Then I would do, if this was a group of women, I did individual tabs that actually allowed me to do biographical sketches of each individual, on each woman. Their death certificates, marriage license, anything in the newspaper that I would find about them, including the headstones, many of them in African Cemetery No. 2. So it helps me when I'm working on the women of the Colored Orphan Home to pull this notebook down, because that's where all my notebooks are, all my notes are. Some people are very good at keeping indexed cards. Some people are good at keeping filed folders. I had 3 file drawers. I got rid of all those because you have to cross reference, and I could never find what I was looking for. Notebook to work for me. And even the smallest, the most innocuous topic, like baseball teams. Did you all have baseball teams? Okay. It's probably going to be a very short file to keep up with. But I kept running across this information about baseball teams in Lexington. So I started the notebook, baseball teams. Everything that I found has gone in my baseball team notebook, including all the newspaper articles that I could come up with. So it helps me because it's handy. It's right there. And I don't have to spend my time going through files looking for notes. So organize your notes.
Yeah, there's a whole history of baseball teams, but black baseball teams in the coal camps.
Hey, Shakina, you got another part of your project here. Okay, baseball coal camp team.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, good. Pictures?
There are some pictures. Now I have seen some pictures. And one of our resources for photographs is the WSGS radio station.
Mm-hmm.
They have a Facebook site, and every now and then you will see, they put out these pictures. I mean, they've got a lot of photographs documenting Black lifestyle in Perry County.
Good.
And that's one of the spots we're going to hit.
Good. And then record information. Don't just copy it. Actually write on the page. If you've copied something, either use pen or pen. You probably can't see this very well, but I usually write at the top of the page if it's a newspaper article, and then I turn it over on the back and also write where I got this. Because invariably you copy a newspaper article and you can't get the header. So you go back to look for it and you can't find it. That means you spend another 5 hours. So write on your document the source, whether it's a newspaper article, a magazine article where you got it from the county clerk's office, or you've taken notes and somebody told you this information. Write it on that page and you'll never be frustrated. You'll always know where it is. Okay, Kiara. You've chosen attorneys. Where do you go? What information do you need to know?
Who in Eastern Kentucky traveled out to become an attorney.
Okay. So where do you think you're going to find information about attorneys in Eastern Kentucky? Where would you start?
A law firm or law office.
Okay. And if you can't find anybody, where you want, what happens?
The internet.
If you're just concentrating on Eastern Kentucky and you can't find a single attorney, African-American attorney in Eastern Kentucky, where would you go?
Out of Eastern Kentucky.
Good. And again, checking law firms. And this will require that you do some background on them, try to find biography about them. And most law firms, most people who are practicing attorneys, they will give you little blurbs about themselves. So that means you might have to do some search and background search on individuals, because that person could have been born in Eastern Kentucky, but they left to earn better income somewhere else. So if you get stymied, just turn the rock over and look underneath it, because there is information. Don't get locked into your original thought. Let your mind wander. Be creative. Soar. I use this term, don't peck around on the grounds with the turkeys, soar with the eagles, because that allows you to think outside the box. And many times you'll have to do that to find what you're looking for. And don't let anybody discourage you. Another little saying I use is be the little stream. If you have a stream, a boulder falls into it, or somebody uses something to dam up the water, what does the water do? And this is not a rhetorical question. What does water do when there's an obstruction in its stream bed?
It goes around it.
Good for you. Exactly. You go around. When somebody who's tried to stop you thinks, I put a stop to her, she's not going to go very far, they're going to come back and find that you're always way down the stream and they're not going to catch up with you. And that's something that you use throughout your life, not just for this project, because there will be people and situations that will tend to discourage you and to block your forward movement. Be the little stream. Find a different path. And that's my old lady wisdom that I can share with you today, because it has worked for me. I've done so much, but it never, I really just know that there's a lot in life to accomplish, and you can't allow minor things to stop you. You just keep moving, and don't let people, I get mad, but I go beyond mad. I told people sometimes when I'm really mad, I'll say, you don't want the old Black woman who takes her earrings and wig off and maybe her shoes, because I'm going to get you. You're in trouble. I try not to go there, but I've been there sometimes. So I just stop and think, okay, the stream's got to go around this. I can't deal with that. Because being upset and angry only absorbs energy that you need to be more positive. So be the stream. Do you all have questions? Did you get information that you think you can use to help you with your projects? Other than rounding out a topic, do you feel comfortable in where you're going to go with your topics? I'll find out from Miss Hudson. She'll tell me how far you've gotten. But I'm excited for you, and I truly do hope that you've had a good summer experience and use this to further your education. Take the lessons you learned from this summer and don't forget them. Don't forget them. And I look forward to hearing from Ms. Hudson about what you've done with the projects.
All right. Well, I do thank you. This has been wonderful, wonderful, wonderful information. I learned a lot too. Wonderful information.
We all do. I learned so much just getting ready to do this.
And it's exciting, it's exciting. And but I thank you so much for taking time out to share this information and your wisdom and your encouragement, and for these interns, um, and we will, as we move further towards the end of the project, we'll get back with you and do a follow-up with you.
Yeah, I would love to know what you're doing, because you can do all those things Miss Emily, Miss Hudson talked about, brochures, walking tours, all of that evolved from my doing all this research.
Mm-hmm.
I made myself available because it was important that other people learn what I had
Yeah.
uncovered. And I tell, it just is. And, doing bus tours, this is one of the notebooks that was developed from all the information I knew about the East End. Um, it just goes on and on and on. And you're young, you can do it. Just remember the old lady's still moving, so you can too.
All
Thank
right.
you. Thank you for
Thank
arranging
you.
this, and good luck
Thank
to you ladies. Bye.
All right.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
And Kiera, I hope you feel better.
Thank you.
Yeah.
All
Yeah,
right.
thank you for joining us.
All right.
Talk to you
Guys.
later, Em.
All right.
Bye.
And we'll see y'all later, guys.
Bye, guys.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Okay. Did we
All
give him
right.
too
Wait a
much,
minute.
Emily?